Thank you, Madam Chair, and thanks for calling this important hearing. And I, too, want to thank the witnesses for joining us today. Fire season is upon us, and we're looking to you as experts to tell us how we can better prepare for this year's fire season. For some time now, the committee has heard time and again that our fires are getting noticeably worse. We have extreme weather conditions, the amount of hazardous fuel in our forests, suboptimal management schemes, and an increasing interurban wildland interface, as the chair was saying, are combining to produce more lethal fires. So the people in my state are all too familiar with this and want to know what we can do to better prepare. Throughout the country, we saw fires, but I think the state of Washington probably was most hard hit. I see Chief Tidwell nodding his head. More than twice the average of number of acres burned across the Northwest. Last July, Washington suffered the Carlton Complex fire, and we spent many time talking to people in the community. This fire alone burned 149,000 acres in a single day. It burned an average of 5 acres per second for 24 hours straight. So the combination of extreme weather combined with this fire, over 353 homes were lost. So despite many efforts for people to coordinate and resources, the people in those towns lacked the power of communication for weeks. Because of down telephone lines, homeowners were not able to call to warn about the continued encroaching fires. Instead, police had to drive around from town to town, calling for evacuation from their vehicles using a megaphone. So one thing that I will be calling for is better coordination between the Forest Service and FEMA on communication responses during these natural disasters. If they are becoming worse, we need better memorandums of understanding that require communications be set up right away so that our communities can continue to deal with these disasters. I know that we can get ahead of these issues, and as the chair mentioned, we need more hazardous fuel reduction in the wildland urban interface, and we need to figure out how to use resulting biomass to offset these costs. So I know we're going to hear some testimony about that today, and I look forward to it. I'm also eager to hear from the witnesses on more prescribed fire burns. Also, we need to address fresh ideas on how to fund Forest Service efforts to protect our communities. Senator Wyden, as we know, has introduced legislation on this, and I happy to be a co-sponsor and look forward to discussing that. The science is clearly telling us that wildfires are not behaving the same way they have in the past decades. The witnesses will talk more about why this is, but I want to make sure that we discuss today what our response is going to be to this evolving problem. Researchers from the Forest Service just last week published a major scientific report. The report made it clear that if we are ever going to get ahead of the problem, the Forest Service needs to respond to wildfires in a fundamentally different way. To quote the report, our modern wildfire problems derive themselves from self-reinforcing cycle of counter-effective actions, end quote. We cannot keep using the same tired approaches that we have for the last 100 years. We need to make sure we're focusing on getting different results. Common sense tells us that a response needs to be modified now that the problem is different. The Forest Service report does a great job of summing up what the Forest Service needs to do. The report says that altering the current trajectory will require a total system transformation. The report bluntly states that maintaining the status quo will actually increase wildland fires, increases the losses we suffer from wildfires, and significantly affect the Forest Service ability to meet its core mission. So we need new solutions. I'm certainly going to work with the chair and my colleagues here on the committee over the next few months to find some of those solutions. I see 4 areas ripe for us to work on. First, we need to do what we can to reduce the probability of catastrophic fires, and we need to see that we are doubling the amount of hazardous fuel treatments and double the amount of prescribed fire burn. Second, we need to fight large wildland fires, which are becoming very expensive. Since 2000, the federal government has spent nearly $24 billion just fighting the large wildfires. So we need to ensure that federal agencies have the money necessary to protect our communities, and we need to treat large wildfires differently in our budget. Third, we need to make sure that these fires are and the management on the ground is being done. There's sure accountability. We've seen questions about spending practices in the media, and we need to make sure that we are incentivizing the right kind of cost savings in the budget. And finally, but most importantly, as I mentioned earlier, the assistance communities receive after the wildfire has started needs to be different. The assistance needs to show up quicker. The assistance needs to be tailored to these issues that are being raised. The federal government is responding to a new type of disaster where these events are blowing up in a greater degree and reaching communities in unbelievable lightning speed. So we need to have a more proactive, upfront coordination with our federal agencies, the Forest Service and FEMA, for example, just in delivering real-time communications and making sure that the resources, and I know the Chief will address this, are actually on the ground. The fire season forecast came out last week, and it's particularly troubling for our state. I hope people are ready to help, and I hope FEMA will work to stage things like generators and assistant equipment and things that will be closer to these areas so that they can respond more quickly. So again, Madam Chair, thank you so much for this hearing. I look forward to the witnesses, and I look forward to working with our committee to try to institute some new approaches.